From floor plans to 5-year plans, business to finding balance, I'm Ashley Bruggeman, an interior designer with a love for beautiful living and a belief that style and substance go hand in hand. I'm pulling back the curtain on design, resilience, and entrepreneurship. Expect real talk, refined tips, and just the right mix of polish and personality. So pour something sweet and join me for a thoughtful conversation with a generous helping of charm and circumstance. Welcome back to Charm and Circumstance. This is Ashley Bruggeman, and I am so glad that you're here. Today's guest is someone I am very excited to share with you, my dear friend, Kentucky State Senator Amanda Mays Bledsoe. Senator Bledsoe not only serves in the Kentucky State Senate, but she's also a mom, an active community leader, and recently she's been working on the Kentucky AI Task Force, tackling big questions about technology, policy, and the future of work in our state. So in this episode, we're going to talk about what it's like to balance raising kids while serving in public office, her journey into politics and leadership, how she manages stress and maintains perspective in these high-pressure environments, and her work on the Kentucky AI Task Force, plus what she sees for the future of Kentucky when it comes to innovation and technology. I know you're going to love this conversation. It's a bit out of our normal wheelhouse, but I think that's what makes it so exciting. It's personal, it's insightful, and it's all about balancing family, leadership, and the future. So let's get into it. Senator Bledsoe, welcome to the show. I would love to start first with your story. So what first inspired you to run for public office?
Well, thank you for having me on your show. I'm a follower, and I think it's really exciting to tackle different issues and different topics. Public service is something that's been in my blood probably from birth. You know, I've always enjoyed politics and government. I was that girl in high school that did student government, that went to Girl State, that listened and followed political rise and falls of, presidential campaigns. And my dad actually took me to quite a few events growing up. So I was exposed to politics and government really at an early age, and felt that you could make a difference for people. And so really what happened to me really in 2014 was looking around and saying, I feel like there's a voice missing on the city council, and there's a voice missing for people that I talk to. And why not try? Why not try to run for office and be present and provide a perspective perhaps that wasn't there?
Yeah. And you have the most amazing children, whom I personally love dearly. I know you do. So how old were they when you first ran for council?
So when I was running for council the first time, my son was in kindergarten.
Okay.
Maze was, and Annabeth was 2.
Goodness. Wow.
Looking back, that was really
insane.
insane.
I don't know that I realized that. Yeah. So was that a wild transition?
Very wild. And I laugh about, I think part of how I won is the entire Maze's kindergarten class was like, we're going to go vote for Maze's mommy, whether they wanted to or not.
Yeah.
They were actively campaigning, and it was cool. It was something that they didn't know what it meant, but knew it was important and wanted to be a part of it. Looking back, those were crazy times when one was in school full time, obviously he was, but she was in and out of preschool. My mom helped a whole lot make that life work. And in theory, it was a part-time job, right? I heard part-time city council, you get to have a difference, bring a voice, perspective, and still have a life, that you can manage. And that probably wasn't true as much as I wanted it to be in my head.
Yeah.
And just the time commitment. But it was awesome. The kids have grown up. I mean, now Maze is a senior, Annabeth's a freshman. They've kind of grown up seeing public life very, very closely.
Yeah. So many listeners are parents or caregivers themselves. So what have been some of the challenges and joys of raising kids while working in such a public-facing career? Because, of course, there are, I'm sure, many pros and cons.
Lots of pros in that they've gotten to see firsthand that their voice matters and that people can make a difference in their government. And they know the mayors, they've met governors, they know other council members or legislators. They know them as people, not as office holders, which I think is really important. We talk about police officers or firemen. You may see a badge or a uniform or an office, and they're just people. Yeah. We're all just people doing our best to serve the community, and they've gotten to see that up close, which has been awesome. Every once in a while, I'm like, hey, you can't call that person by their first name. We are out in public now, so that's Senator so-and-so or Mayor so-and-so. And So that's been kind of fun, but it's made it very personal. I think also their friends have grown up with it. And so their friends have seen that they can make a difference and come to things with me or go to events and watch their government work, which I think is really kind of cool.
Things that what they might otherwise see as out of reach.
Yeah, or untangible, or something that's over there, but not something that they could do. And so it's personalized it, I think, for a lot of, I hope for a lot of kids that haven't seen a woman do that and seen a mom do that in that way, which has been pretty cool. I remember campaigning when the kids were little. I was like, "Oh, let's go door to door. This will be fun." And then they were, I'm telling them all the rules. Follow the sidewalk, and they're like running in people's yards, and I'm like, "This is not helping. This is not." They didn't get it, kind of the rules, but it was fun. They got to participate. Challenges. This isn't a 9 to 5, and they, as the kids have gotten older, and now they have their own social media, and they can follow things on Twitter. Now they see what people said about me, maybe a vote they didn't appreciate, or now they can just say kind of whatever they want about you. My kids read it. And having them understand that, hey, we don't know those people and we don't care, and we're not going to focus on that. But that has been not everyone has that job performance, if you will, in public.
Right.
And I'm still their mom.
Yeah. It's actually an interesting thought that hasn't occurred to me before, of where these kids have grown up with social media, like we didn't, but so their experience with negative feedback and in a public way like that exists. And we, of course, didn't deal with that. And so it's kind of in line with a lot of what it's like to be a teenager this day and age.
You're exactly right. And it's funny, I take it more personally than they do.
Yeah.
They're kind of like, Mom, we don't know these people. It's fine. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
Because they're used to engaging on social media and tuning it out themselves, which is tools we've tried to provide for them and how to engage appropriately. But it is definitely a different dynamic and a good learning experience, but challenging.
So as a woman, of course, you carry the load across the board, balancing family and your career. And so what would you say a typical day looks, which you probably don't even have a typical day whatsoever, so that's kind of a joke, but like a typical day when you're in session versus you are not. And just to, of course, for listeners that don't know, where Kentucky's state legislature is deemed part-time, we'll put that in quotes, but you are, even when you're not actually in session, you're in committee meetings and all the other fun stuff, or you're campaigning if it's that time of year.
You're exactly right. And it's a very different environment, like January to March, if you will, versus today and what I'm doing today. On city council, it was interesting. I would tell the kids, okay, I'm going to the 6 o'clock meeting. I'll be home in an hour and a half, before bed. Well, then we would go, and then 30 people would show up to speak, and all of a sudden, an hour meeting is now a 4-hour meeting, and I'm not home, and I'm not there to do X, Y, or Z before bed. And I would tell my mom or whoever had the kids that night, or Todd or someone, say, hey, turn on the TV. I'm there. That's where I am. And so they could see that, but it was very unpredictable. This is not you don't have shifts. You don't have a job where I can control my timeline.
Yeah.
Most of public service is controlled by everyone else in the public, and that's okay. We're here to serve. And so it's not but it's something it's hard to predict and schedule.
Yeah.
As a mom, when you're trying to manage dinner time and transition with kids and who's going where after school, and now all of a sudden when I thought I was going to be out at 3, I can't.
Yeah.
And logistically, crazy.
And to help them even understand that, especially as young children, I would imagine.
It was very unpredictable. There was lots of, well, who's getting me today? I'm like, I don't know, but be out here at 3 o'clock and someone will be here.
Yeah.
It just may not be me. And they've gotten used to that. They grew up with it. So it's not there was security in knowing that we were going to do it. It just may not be as traditional. But during session, when we go over there in the Senate, it is I get there at 8 a.m. I stay as long as that day takes. And again, you never know when session's going to end that day. And the receptions afterwards, or meetings after the meetings. And so I may get home 7 or 8 during session, and I'm one of the lucky ones that doesn't stay in Frankfurt all year or during session. So I get to go in the morning and come home, but I do that so I can see the kids before bed or in the morning before they go to school.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for that. But it's far more 9 to 5, meaning you go in the morning, you stay all day, you're there when you leave. And then after session, it's more difficult because it isn't traditional. I may have 2 meetings or 3 meetings a committee for that week. The next week I have 4. The next week I have 0. Mm-hmm. And so it's not as predictable. And sometimes sometimes it's harder.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And you've always done such a good job of, I feel like, balancing. And there's, you can't be perfect at any of this. No one can. But you will often take the kids to different events that coincide with your position and involve them. So you're really getting to do both at the same time. But how do you find balance in that, or how do you find yourself prioritizing one over the other, in certain situations?
It's really hard. I think when I was younger or first become a mom, you think, well, you have to have this much time with your quiet time, this much time to exercise, this much time to spend with these kids, this much time to, go down a list. And you constantly felt like a failure because you can't manage your life in 15-minute increments and try to balance it all equally and feel like, oh, I've done enough. You can't. And so my mantra has kind of been be present where I'm present and be fully present when I'm there so that the kids know, or the meeting that I'm in, that I'm focused on where I am at the moment. And then also it's attention to be managed. You lean in sometimes on this schedule and I'll tell the kids, hey, I've got a rough 2 weeks coming up. And I know myself, okay, how am I going to budget my time and what I need to manage the next 2 weeks? And then the next week I pull back a week and I go back to some of the things I didn't catch up on and spend more investment, maybe in longer exercise time or longer reading or more time with friends and socializing and kind of fill in those buckets. But it's an ebb and flow. It is not a circle that we try to, or a equilibrium we try to balance. That led to failure pretty fast.
That makes total sense. I love that.
I quit that.
Yeah, you have to change the expectations.
Yes, and you have to build in the management of time. I will be the first one to say yes to something. So, hey, can you speak at whatever? Can you come to this meeting? I look at the calendar; it's open. Yeah, be happy to. And then I get to that week, and I'm like, what was I thinking? I have no time here to transition, or I didn't build in time for myself to exercise, which I know mentally I need. And so having that control of the calendar, my dad used to say, if it's not in your calendar, it's not in your life. Well, that means I have to plug in time for people, for me, in advance, so that when I get those requests 2 months out, I'm thinking about the whole week and not just about what I can do today.
Yeah. The kids' interest in your work. And if I had to guess, I'm going to guess that Annabeth shows a bit more interest maybe than Maze.
That's probably fair.
And so what do you think? Do you think Annabeth will ever be in public office?
Oh, would not surprise me at all. She has got tons of leadership gifts and loves people, loves serving, is very comfortable talking with people and being adults. And she's done a couple speaking things at her school in leadership stuff, which she introduced me at an event. And she was so funny. She was like, okay, and she had her notes ready, and then she got up there and she got nervous, and then she was embarrassed about it. I'm like, this was your first time, behind a microphone on a stage, like that's a big step. So let's manage our own expectations.
I love that.
But she enjoys it. She enjoys knowing all the people. I'll come home and talk about something. She goes, oh my, guess who it is, and she'll pick out which senator it is that I was talking to.
Oh my gosh.
So she gets that. She really appreciates that piece of it. Maze is more like, are we winning or losing, and what are you going to do, and can I go to UK games? And we buy all of our own tickets, but he loves going to the games. He loves being a part of the broader kind of political conversation. He's the one who will watch the president's debates and then have thoughts about that. But I'm kind of mom, so it doesn't transition for him.
Yeah. So I imagine that there are plenty of times when you are dealing with stress from whether it has been campaign situations, decisions on a vote, whether you're going to run for another office, whatever it may be, that could easily spill over into home, as we all do. So have you ever found tools to help guard the stress from one element seeping over into the other?
It's really hard. And I would say for any working parent, when you're in today's 24-hour 7 work day, which is what it is with social media and texting and email, it's so easy to pick up the phone and see a text or see an email and think, I got to respond to this right now, or see a social media post that I'm tagged in that I feel like I need to respond to immediately. all of that eats into all your time, all the time.
Right.
And so I think the challenge for me in particular has been, okay, how do I put in boundaries for myself that I allow myself the mental space to not deal with those things and to limit it? So on the drive home from Frankfurt, I often call, make phone calls to constituents, that kind of stuff. But then when I kind of get home, I kind of finish it. And I'm like, great, I'm not going to engage for a little while. I'm going to be home, do present stuff, make dinner. And then I may engage, especially during session in the evening, of course. After the kids go to bed, I'll go back. But you have to guard some of that time, or it just consumes everything. And I have found myself getting frustrated with the kids or saying something more sharp and going back later and saying, you know what, I'm sorry. I was not upset with you. What you did was wrong. And we need to have a conversation about that. But my attitude, my tone, my frustration was not because of this. And you didn't deserve that extra piece. And owning it and teaching them that it's okay to recognize when we haven't done it well. And why? Hey, I was really mad at this thing at work, and I got on my skin, and it came out in a place that wasn't appropriate for you. But that's hard, and I'm no master.
This is what makes you such a freaking amazing human being.
No, I'm work in progress, but I'm getting better.
Yeah, you're pretty fabulous. Okay, so for listeners who may not know much about the inner workings of state politics or politics in general, for that matter, not that we are going to get into politics, so don't worry, but what is something that most surprises you about the job, or has, I guess, through your career, both on city council and now in the state legislature?
So I would say how much is expected of you to know about so many different issues. I'll go back to city council days when they sat me down with the map and they would show me all the roads in my little district, and they were like, okay, here's how much money you've been allocated. Now you pick the roads. And I thought, I'm sorry, you want me to pick which roads get paved based on what? Well, you just picked the roads. And I was like, that's ridiculous. There's got to be a better system. I'm not a road engineer. I have no idea about asphalt. And I quickly decided to do a pavement management plan. And without going into all the details, it was kind of like, I just remember thinking, I am not qualified to do that. Like, I need data. I need something I'm measuring a plan, how to do it to maximize funds and all that kind of stuff. All the way to today, when you're sitting in meetings working on state legislation that's going to affect the justice system, foster care, to this last session alone, talking about hemp-infused drinks and versus, the alcohol and beer and the wine and how the different tiered systems are going to interface with a whole new market that we didn't have before. These are all things that very few people have a background in, a technical background. Now, if you're a doctor, work on healthcare policy, that makes sense. And then you're in separate meetings talking about agriculture, and you may have some, I like food, you like food. That's my extent.
I go to the grocery store, but
I grew tomatoes this year. They were awesome. That does not make me a farmer. So having to rely on your peers for expertise, having to do enough research to know enough and talk to your constituents about what they believe. But that is the depth and breadth was something that I was like, holy cow, there's a lot expected of a legislator to represent and know enough about those issues to vote on them.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you say that, because interior designers and architects in their world are expected to know everything about every component of that process, that building process, and every material that is going into the building. And it's just impossible to know all of that. And so in the very same way, they depend on the outside consultants to educate them on the inner workings of everything. Something else that I thought of as you were saying that is, I think, the pressure of the public and like this unfair expectation on public officials to know every detail of every possible policy that might come up. The ability to go and meet with your public officials is something that probably the public doesn't take advantage of as much as they should or understand that process.
I agree.
So what would you recommend to, how does that work, at least from, if you can speak to city council,
Sure.
that's fine too. But I guess even knowing the difference between what's a city issue versus what's a state issue
Oh my
and a
goodness.
federal issue.
The number of times I've said that's a federal decision, that's not a state policy, or that's a city decision. And here's how people are like, well, you're pawning me off. Well, no, I'm just trying to put you in the right place to have the right conversation. And that doesn't always mean it's with me. And even just navigating who's doing what, I think sometimes for the average person is very confusing these days. And then two, if there's a piece of legislation or a concept being discussed in Frankfurt at an interim meeting or on the TV, and you're like, oh, I care about that. I wonder if my legislator knows about X, Y, or Z. Assume they don't. Assume they don't know. And they'll call me or email me and say, how did you not know this was going to negatively impact my business? And I was thinking, I don't know anything about your business, and I did not know that. But when they come and share it, and they can talk about, all right, well, if we do this, here's the domino in these industries or these areas that we may not see, it helps us have a better perspective to improve legislation. Some of that gets worked out in the interim right now. We're seeing that happen. People are bringing kind of proposed legislation to the table and sharing the idea and concept and allowing people to kind of come out of the woodwork and say, hey, here's how this may affect me or our industry that you may not have seen before. How do we make sure there's no unintended consequences? Now, you're never going to get it right perfect. I'm the first one to admit it. But if you're someone who cares about what you're doing or an issue that's close to your heart, assume your legislator doesn't know. Send an email, or more importantly, pick up the phone, call their office and say, hey, when can I meet you? If you're in the district, I will say, hey, come meet me where I am. Come to Lexington, or I'll be in one of my counties once a couple times a month, and say, hey, meet me at this Starbucks or meet me at this coffee shop, and let's just have a conversation. And that's me learning from someone who's closest to an issue, be it personal or not, how what I'm doing is affecting it. And I think that's the most important communication, is two ways. Assume your legislator isn't trying to hurt you, and that they really do care. And then bring that attitude to the table and share.
They're just like us.
They're just like us. They are us. You know, I will often tell someone, a colleague who's an expert in a certain field, tell me about this because I don't get it. Okay, then they'll come to me and say, Amanda, I really don't understand this AI thing. Why does this matter? Okay, let me share with you why it matters. And we have conversations and we learn from that. And hopefully we improve public policy as a result.
I think that the public often does not understand how accessible legislators are to them, and how easy it is to actually get appointments set up or get the ear of their specific legislator. And it's something that should absolutely be taken advantage of. So during this current term, what issues are closest to your heart, or have you been working on the most?
So it's interesting. I enjoy public policy that's more the budget, transportation, roads, infrastructure, basic government stuff. That's what I love.
Sounds so fun.
I know it's not fun for most people. Most people are like, that's terrible. Just tell me why my road isn't fixed. I'm like, well, it's on a plan. Here's where it is on the plan. Here's how we're going to fund it. And no one cares about that. They just want the road paved. But I enjoy the process, and I enjoy on the budget, looking at the resources we have and trying to maximize the taxpayer dollar to the best result for the people who live here, and to do good and to do it wisely. I enjoy that, but it's not close to my heart. It's a passion. I have cried more in the Families and Children Committee in the last couple of years than I ever cried in council on an issue. Listening to the stories in the foster care and the kids that have been traumatized now by generations of trauma has been just heartbreaking. As a mom, you're listening and you're just imagining, we have kids sleeping in office buildings. We have kids that hospitals can't take. We have kids that the private sector that are designed for homes for this are just like, these are the acute of the acute, and we don't have the capacity to take them because of the issues that they're exhibiting, dealing with, all the trauma. And just imagine telling someone, we don't have some place to, no family will take you, no place will take you. Just added trauma. Has been just terrible. And there is no easy answer to that. There's no process or budget or here's how we're going to fix it. This is human hearts, human bodies, kids who are in desperate need of healing and in a safe place. And it's just really hard. It's hard to fix. And so those are things that we've continuously talked about in that committee and working with the administration to try to find a better way to love and care for these kids. And it's not about finances. It's not a money issue. This is a real, we need more parents, more families to be foster families and to take the lower risk kids off so that our higher intensive kids can have a different environment. And we don't have enough people doing it.
How do you approach collaboration with different perspectives across the Senate?
It's interesting. Being from Lexington, I was redistricted and picked up 3 rural counties, and Woodford, Mercer, and Boyle. And I remember saying very specifically, no one asked me if I wanted to take on. This was not designed for me. This was designed for everybody else. Everyone assumed I was in on it. I was not. And my first thought was, they don't know me. They don't. I'm a Lexington girl. I'm a 4th generation Lexingtonian. What if they don't like me? And
well, that's impossible.
Well, I appreciate that. But the little girl in me was like, what am I going to do what am I going to do to relate? And the best thing about it has been I have gotten a chance to get to know 3 different counties with different leadership, with different issues and different structures of government. None of them are merged. You have counties and cities, and how they're functioned and what's important to them has made me a much better legislator. Because the issues that they're facing are different from Lexington, and they're not over in Pikeville or Paducah. These are my district, who I represent. So I've worked really hard to get to know the challenges that they have. That's given me different perspective.
Yeah,
way different perspective, just of myself. Yeah. Not to mention then sitting in the caucus room with 30 other legislators on the majority side, and even listening to ourselves debate issues, because they're in Western Kentucky, and it's very different than how maybe Central Kentucky or Eastern Kentucky views a particular issue. And it may not have anything to do with politics. This is about a farming issue or about logistics. And so I think the best thing we can do is, this is a relationship game. And so before I judge why their perspective is wrong, or why they're fighting me, for instance, on an issue, I've tried to get to know them as a person, get to know who they represent as a people, and then figure out from that, how does that perspective work with mine, and where do we find common ground? Where do we overlap? How do we get to yes in a way that says, you have to be wrong for me to be right? Because that doesn't make anybody a winner. That makes us winners and losers. And I want Kentucky to win wherever I can, right? And so the goal there is, okay, well, where can I get off maybe my lines in the sand and still advocate for principles and still advocate for things that I care about, without making it I have to win, you have to lose? Can we find a win-win for most of it? And I think in politics, especially in legislative work, where it's not executive and you're executing things, this is a collaboration, and it takes you being willing to listen to each other and build relationships to make it work.
So you now co-chair the Kentucky AI Task Force, which I can't even imagine all that you're dealing with on this. And this is the 2nd year now for this task force. I'm assuming some other states have these.
Yeah, some have task forces, some have committees, some have subcommittees. Every state is doing something in this space. And we decided to do a task force last year and to re-up it this year, really to get our hands around all the different places that artificial intelligence is touching government and issues, before actually forming it into a committee, or if it might fit into another committee.
So can you share exactly what the task force is, how it's made up?
It was set up by leadership, and there's a Senate and a House chair. Josh Bray is my co-chair in the House, and we co-chaired it together last year. And we have many of the same members, actually, that were appointed to the task force by leadership, members of both parties in both chambers. And so we have House and Senate, R's and D's, sitting around a table and once a month really meeting and talking about what is artificial intelligence and what do we need to do to respond to it. And it's honestly a learning thing more than anything else, providing a venue for us to have some of these broad conversations about the implications of AI in a public setting where we're discussing, debating, honestly just trying to figure out maybe what the next step might be before we legislate in the space, and seeing what the federal government's going to do. So it's been a fascinating, I have no background in IT, as you know. I think my undergrad's in philosophy and Latin. I have a master's in international security and international affairs. AI tech is not on this resume anywhere. You can look real hard and you won't find it. So several people were like, how on earth did you end up? I'm like, good question. I asked leadership the same thing. But what it comes down to, a lot of this is a responsibility of use. It's a where is it appropriate? Why is it appropriate? Who's going to decide where it's appropriate? Who's going to put the regulatory processes in place to make sure there's accounts and balances and accountability? And how are we going to set all that up in a way that's thoughtful? And so I don't have a dog in this fight. I mean, I don't have a software company. I don't own Bitcoin or, have data in my life. So I can be kind of a neutral arbitrator in the space and just allow it to have a conversation. And then, put together some good stuff. We passed Senate Bill 4 last year, which was a bill that I wrote in collaboration with Representative Bray. And the governor signed it, which was putting together a regulatory framework of how Kentucky government, so only government agencies, will use AI. And then we did not touch the private sector, but many states have. States have been passing legislation that regulates what the private sector can or cannot do in AI, which is fascinating. When you think about a company who may have different rules in Colorado than Kentucky than Nevada. And so we're seeing the federal government really should do some, privacy legislation, some AI legislation there. They've done through executive order, through Trump's latest executive order, but not through legislation. And so you're seeing states really take different approaches, which of course is their prerogative. And I love the state right position. And yet it's very challenging for companies to navigate in that tech space where to go. Not to mention the data and the energy that is used to do all these searches. I mean, Kentucky's in a really good space in that we have, we're a good, how to phrase this? We're in a place that has not extra energy, but more than we have to have. And so we outsource some of our energy to other places, other states. And so there are a lot of people looking, hey, we could move a data center to Kentucky and, capitalize on some of that, which is good. And yet, how do we make sure that we also protect and make sure that there's enough use for people to turn on the lights and to have the small businesses that needs it? The Apple manufacturing plant in Mercer, the Corning facility, going to expand, uses a lot of energy to make sure they're doing the Apple products and glass. We need to balance that with the private plus continuing. Will we have enough data and energy to do all the data we want to do one day? So it is a really multifaceted conversation, and I'm learning so much, as is everyone else in the task force. And again, most of us aren't techies. And so we sit there and we're learning just like you are at home, trying to figure out where do I use the AI tool to be a good tool for my life, make it better, make my business easier, impact more people, make my life more function. There's great tools in that. And every tool can be used to harm. A hammer can build a house or tear it down.
Right.
And so then how do we minimize the risk of AI to privacy, to your own data? Is challenging.
Yeah. And it's, it's such a hot topic. And there's such also, I think right now, at least from what I have seen, that's really out there and available to the public. You can tell in a lot of cases, images that are created or videos created by AI. I'm sure there's still plenty out there where you can't, and they're that good, but those aren't really the mainstream yet.
But they're getting better.
And so, that's the scary part of the lack of transparency, right? On knowing what's real and what's not.
Absolutely. And especially telling your kids, right? It used to say when we were growing up, we were just getting the internet, in college. And so you would Google something and you got truth. You're relatively pretty less. There was good information that you could get a resource from. Now, there's so much disinformation on the internet that I'm more like telling the kids, hey, when you Google something, truth and verify. Look to see what they're telling you. Where else can you find that truth confirmed? And maximizing their ability to be good critical thinkers in this space, and not to assume what they see on an ad on Instagram or on a post on something or a reel that is true. And I think especially in politics, where you have elected officials who the software now to engineer my voice or to take myself and make me a video of me doing and saying things that I did not do and turn it into a reel real fast and get it out there. How do you rebut that? That's not an ad in a paper that comes to your house. It's a picture that might be cropped or edited a little bit. This feels real. And so I think that confusion it's nerve-wracking, especially for older adults who may not be as sharp or may not be as confident in their ability to know what is true or not on videos. We're getting better, but the technology is getting better.
Yeah. And I was recently, as you know, I teach a class at UK in the College of Design. And before school started, we actually had a faculty meeting that was the entire college, it wasn't really a debate. Well, it kind of was on AI and the use of AI. And I'm sure it actually is indicative of so many large groups or discussions on AI where people have very black and white opinions.
Absolutely.
And they are really across the board.
Yep.
And there's just, I don't know.
Oh, it's fascinating, especially in education. And I could go between K through 12 and higher ed, and then after. It's very reflective as a teacher or a parent of where you're comfortable using it. So if I'm comfortable using it, I'm comfortable my kids using it, my supervision. If a teacher is confident and comfortable, they're going to use it in the classroom. If another teacher is not, no cell phone, don't use your computer, no AI, paper pencil, mentality, nothing wrong with that. But as a parent, you come home and you've got kids who now, well, I'm allowed to use it here, but not really allowed to use it here. And as a parent, you're who's lying? Are you cheating? Are you,
right?
What am I supposed to do with that? It's very confusing. I look at the tools, and especially in the early elementary ed, where you can have apps that are helping those kids do really specialized training for maybe some issues that are very complicated for them. Math, English, where they can, especially on autism spectrum disorders, places where they have a disability, learning disabilities. You can do some really cool tools that are interactive, and 15, 20 minutes on that app is, not as good as a teacher, but when you don't have a teacher to do that for 30 kids, you can leverage some really cool individualized learning that's going to help those kids.
Interesting.
Well, that's a great tool.
Yeah.
Now, does it replace learning on their own and using a pencil and paper and writing and doing those things? No. I had someone tell me recently, we were talking about cursive writing, and I said, my son doesn't, for signing his license, he was like, I don't think I have a signature. And I was like, what do you mean you don't have a signature? And so we were working on it, and I thought, oh my gosh, you don't have a signature. And someone said, well, they're not going to need one day. Their eyes are going to be all the signature they need, or their fingerprint, or, you won't have the need for that. And I was looking at them like, what are we, the Jetsons? Like, that sounded absurd.
Right.
And yet in my head, I'm thinking,
yet
you're probably
we're
right.
already there.
Yeah, we're there. I don't know why I'm holding on to this. It's just interesting. So it's a fascinating time to see in the education space, especially, and in companies where they have leaned in or pulled back. I'm sure we're going to get it right some, we're going to get it wrong some, and that's trial by error in an emerging technology that's transformative and has, again, great opportunities. But there are some areas that are pretty scary.
Yeah, and legislation is not typically like the forerunner.
No.
So as this is an ever-changing, ever-emerging industry, I imagine, legislation is going to be
constant. You're going to be constantly tweaking.
Yeah.
Like anything else. And I could say, I made a point, we have a 3-tiered alcohol system that we're still tweaking all the time. And we're tweaking because markets change. And now we have Amazon and different delivery systems and ways of getting different things. And so what worked 20 years ago, even 5 years ago, we're still tweaking.
Yeah.
It's going to be it feels like a daily tweak on AI. And we won't, of course, do that legislatively, but it is the challenge. And we're not going to, it will be hard to keep up. And so putting the right philosophical things in place, or at least a framework in place, while we figure out the details, is going to be, it's a start, but it is no way going to be finished. And there'll be when I'm out of office, they'll still be dealing with legislation.
Yeah. So what are some opportunities that you see down the road that might be specific to Kentucky in regards to AI? You mentioned
energy for sure.
Data. Okay.
Energy consumption, between coal and, I'm kind of an all-in energy person, I guess. I believe we should use solar where we can, use wind where we can, be mindful of the resources we have and maximizing whatever we can, the best and highest use possible. But it's going to take all of the energy. And yet, what's interesting is, like, even a year ago to today, we're getting better at efficiencies. And so the energy use is going down in some areas in terms of what we need. So that's one that will be very, the energy conversation will be pretty important.
And I'm
Kentucky.
assuming that there is constant work from, I guess it's the engineering side of these data centers and places like that to minimize the energy needed to do this work.
Sure, absolutely.
Right?
And then on top of it, President Trump put out a directive about a couple weeks ago that there'll be Paducah is a site where we're going to have to revise some of the nuclear options for nuclear power, which is from a national security perspective. I mean, I have been at a number of national conferences, and they talk about AI being an arms race and making sure that the United States wins. We don't want China to win the AI race. We want that to be a U.S. win, but that means we have to put in and have the capacity of the energy to drive a lot of that conversation, because it's a power supply. So the nuclear conversation is really important to Kentucky down there. And then we had not a day or two after that, the private sector released their investment in Paducah to also do some data capacity, different issues but similar spaces on nuclear. And that again is very unique to Kentucky, and will put us in a really interesting place, geopolitically and nationally in that space.
Wow. What are some of the challenges that you see as like the forefront of AI that we should be paying attention to, whether it is specific to us as business people in the private sector or dealing with children as parents?
Both. So as a parent, I think teaching your kids when and how it's appropriate to use AI under supervision. Can it be a tool to help them? My son, Maze hates language words, and he would often he will put a word into ChatGPT and say, give me 5 uses of that word, sentences. That helps him understand different contexts for that word. Doing it on his own. He just figured it out, right? That's a great use of ChatGPT. Using it to engage in a relationship, not so much.
Right.
And we have seen so many tragic stories where kids especially have leaned in and started having a relationship with an entity that is responding back to them almost in a relationship that's not true, and led them down very dark suicidal paths. And so that, again, that tension of trying to balance the good with the bad and leave the freedom to have it is hard. It's really hard. So as a parent, just making sure that you're aware of what your kids are doing and why they're doing it, and getting them to think kind of 3 steps down the line. Is this appropriate? Is it good use? If it's not, ask me.
Right.
Have those conversations with them. And then I think in the business side, people are really concerned about losing their jobs, especially in the professional side of things. When you have a tool that could do your accounting for you, and now all you're doing is checking those kind of things, the professional software things. That's a real thing. It's going to happen at different points in the next couple of years. How do you position yourself to leverage the tools that you'll have to gain more time? I think is what will be really interesting. So if I'm a professional and I'm now using AI, and I'm saving by doing receipts or streamlining 4 hours a week that I didn't have before, so I have something else that allows me to free up that time. How am I using those 4 hours now better? To dream of something new, to invent something new, to go in a different direction, to put some brain power behind maybe a research option or that you just didn't have, quote, time for before. I think that's going to be the differentiator in kind of where companies grow and when they just fall apart.
Yeah. Playing offense instead of defense, really.
Yeah.
So on a positive note, what excites you most about this work?
I think just that it's going to save time on things that were nuanced and remedial, like the putting in receipts. Think about how you used to have someone type up all the notes from a meeting. You don't need that anymore.
Right.
Someone else can do that for you. That frees you up to think about what's the next best thing. What is a new Apple invention that we don't know is coming, or what can we do to solve some of the bigger issues that we have in our society that we haven't had, I don't say haven't had time to do, but maybe the freedom to do some of that. I think that's kind of exciting.
Totally.
And I think for even our own kids to see in 5 to 10 years what things they're going to be using in companies that we won't even know exist will come to see. That's kind of exciting.
Yeah. And I think from a small business perspective too, it is I am able to do so much more through the technology that exists, the software that I use to streamline a process or communication and
Sure.
managing schedules and things like that, that there is no way I would be able to accomplish what I do just myself.
Right.
So there definitely is positive to the technology. It's just about, I think, the use and when it maybe bleeds over into our social connection and personal
Absolutely.
needs.
Absolutely. And if it frees up 4 hours and you now spend an hour with a colleague dreaming about what's next
Yeah.
or how to improve something,
Yeah.
that's going to yield far better results
Yeah.
than working on your receipts,
Right.
or spreadsheets. So
Oh,
that's exciting.
Lord, yes. Okay, so tell me a little bit about how you've seen AI affecting healthcare.
This is one of the more, I think, fascinating places from an individual perspective. My dad had cancer. He had multiple myeloma, battled it for 8 years, and did a number of new treatments, trial and error treatments that didn't work for him, worked for others. He used to say he was statistically important because it didn't work for him, but he was able to show that. And so one of the things that I find fascinating in the healthcare space is how do we provide better healthcare to Kentuckians in a way that is cost effective, but also changes actually someone's healthcare in a more positive trajectory faster. 1 in 3 Kentuckians is on Medicaid. 1 in 3. Our Medicaid budget for Kentucky is, when you add all the costs up, bigger than the general fund. It is a substantial piece of Kentucky's budget. And we have a lot of people in that space on Medicaid. Why do I mention it? Well, because it affects both Kentucky's pocketbook, but it affects Kentuckians. We want people to be healthy. And so when you look at the potential of AI, let's say you have an individual who's been diagnosed with cancer, and they can take their body with their genes and their metabolic background, I won't use all the scientific words because I'm not a doctor or nurse, but their biology, all the things that make up that person, and put it into an AI machine, and they can run drug treatments on it and find out what works and what doesn't. They can see what's going to be effective. They can see future challenges with what protocols may or may not work. That kind of information is invaluable when you think about someone who may come in from outside Lexington, per se, and they come up for treatments at UK, and then maybe it's not working as quickly as they want. And they decide, that travel in's really hard. I don't want to do that anymore. And they stop getting the health care they need, and it gets worse, right? And so they're not getting good health care. And how do we help make that better? Well, if we can provide some tools that make those first visits more effective and put them on a healthcare pattern faster, that's positive. We have seen in some of the AI research of tools, I don't like it when my mom would get on me, have you taken your medication today, or have you gone for a walk, or your friends or your spouse kind of getting on you for maybe not taking care of your follow-up in healthcare. Having an AI chat, an AI tool that might engage with you, actually found people are more actively engaged. They follow up on their appointments. They take their meds when they're supposed to. They go on the walk when they're asked. They drink their water. A third party, who's not in your home, encouraging you and keeping you on track. So there are a couple ways between better actual healthcare and actually some tools to support you. We might get Kentuckians on a better path faster. That'd be great. So I find the healthcare space to be one of the more, and now just because they're sharing some data and research, you can see more quickly how to improve people's health especially on the minor disease pieces, is starting to work.
Yeah.
That I think is really exciting.
From
Save time,
being
money.
in trials and
Absolutely. And you'll feel better quicker, right? There's nothing more discouraging when you're sick than trying something and finding out 3 days later the antibiotic's not working. The protocol isn't helping the way it needs to. And then you find out, oh, well, you know what? You have an interesting strain of, of a blood type. It doesn't work with that drug. Well, you might know that now on the front end. And so you're going to maybe see some result faster, and you're more likely than to continue down the good healthcare path.
Yeah. And I guess the practice of doing that will enable so much more input on the data side.
Absolutely.
That can then continue to cycle through and be more useful. Yeah, it's
really
cool.
exciting. We are really fortunate to have UK and U of L in Kentucky that are doing some really cool stuff in that space, and to the benefit of Kentuckians, I think, one day.
Yeah. Well, it's been an absolute blessing to have you here. Thank you so much, Senator Bledsoe, for sharing your story and just even your personal life, and what it's like to balance all that you do, public service, motherhood,
and making the time to also spend with your friends and me specifically.
I know our listeners are going to walk away feeling completely inspired by your story and your hard work in all of these aspects of your life. So, and of course, the exciting opportunities ahead with AI and innovation here in Kentucky. So thank you for sharing those with us. For those who would want to follow along with your work, where can they connect with you?
So I'm online, of course, on Facebook with my page. That's my political page, if you will. AmandaMaysBledsoe.com is our website. And I do most of my stuff on Twitter, Amanda M. Bledsoe on Twitter as well. You can follow both those places. And you can also sign up for newsletters for people who still like newsletters and email. Believe it or not, I still send one out.
I didn't even know that. I'm
do.
signing up. All right. Well, thanks again for tuning in to Charm and Circumstance. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, subscribe so you never miss what's next, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I would greatly appreciate it. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep building a life that matters. I'll see you next time, friend.
Thanks for joining me on Charm and Circumstance. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along on Instagram, because charm is personal and circumstance is what you make of it.